All right, welcome back to part 3. We're going to keep working with our lists and just kind of manipulate the space just a little bit to make our layout look nice. Now we're going to adjust some of this down here. And one of the things we're going to attack a little bit, we already did the paragraphs here in the footer, and I'm going to do these things in between the footer. I'm going to put one for the OL, and I'll put comma UL. The reason that I put the comma there, then whatever I do, this will affect both of them. Since I have an ordered list and an unordered list, this will target both of them. Whatever I do for one will do for the other, and then I'll also make one for the LI, for the line items. And remember, we just kind of messed around with that a little on the previous exercise. I don't think we have a lot to do, but we might want to put some space after, or put some margin bottom to spread them out a little bit, margin or padding. And one thing I just want to point out, when you use margin, and you could use margin or padding with text, in terms of spacing, either one will work. And sometimes margin is nice because you could use negative. Like I said with the H1, we used a negative margin, so you'll get a feel of which one to use. So what we want to do with our list, if I go back and look at it, one thing I just want to change here is there's this space in here. Now I already took the margin off, and there's still space here, because if there was space because of this paragraph, it would have took it out. It's actually putting space above the ordered list. So what I want to do is actually go in the ordered list, and you might not know this, but I'm just kind of pointing it out. I'm just going to put margin top, and if I put 0 right now, and I'll put pics just in case, and if I put margin top 0, it should wipe that out, and I'll refresh it, and you can see what happened. It wiped it out. Now it doesn't look that it's a little too crowded. I like that it goes with it a little bit, but it's a little too crowded. So I could put a little more space there, maybe just like 10 or something. I don't need a lot. And I'll refresh it. And that looks a little nicer, maybe even a little less. Maybe even I'll do, you can kind of mess around a little. Maybe I'll do like 6. And that looks a little better. Now, one thing I could also do, this is with HTML, and I don't always recommend this, but you could go right into the HTML for these paragraphs, and you could put a B tag in here. It's an opening B and a closing B, and that's just bold. And I could do it down here. And I could do it down here. So people still use that. It's not that bad to use. We could have created a style, but then we would have had to create a style just for that one. So, and refresh it. That works fine. It's making those bold. So our spacing is good in here. The only other thing I want to do is kind of spread out these line items, which we already know how to do from our previous exercise. That would be right in here. And we could just you could do margin or padding, either one. And you might just want to be consistent. If you're using margin a lot with some of these paragraph things, then stick with margin. And I'll do margin bottom. It's almost like space after that you would use with Word. So, and make sure you spell it right. Showing up red because it's not spelled right. It won't do that in W3 School, so that's why this is nice working in brackets. Margin bottom, and I'm just going to do not a whole lot, maybe like 4 pixels, and see how that looks to start. And that's between each line. That's after each line. When I hit refresh here, you can see it spread them out just a little. Maybe I'll do it just a little more, maybe like 6, just so it's a little more noticeable since we're doing it. And I'll refresh it. So now it has 6 pixels space after each line item. And that looks pretty good. The only problem we have is we have a little extra space down here at the end of this, and we just have to figure out where that is. Now there's ways we could kind of figure that out. One way is to actually go down here and do inspect. And they have some of these tools in here. I could see there's some if I go on this arrow and I hover over some of these areas, I can see where there's some space coming. See, there's my padding, but there's actually extra space kind of after here, and it looks like it's after the list. So let me just see if I take away the space after this last list here. Now, I have them for both right now, but I'd have to make a separate one. I'll put one here just for the UL. And we'll see if this kind of helps it a little bit. I'll put UL, and I'll put margin bottom, and I'll put 0. And I'll see if that fixes it. I don't know, but I'll see. And that's just for the UL. That's the bulleted one, so that's unordered. That's the second one, the bulleted one. And I'll save that, and I'll see if that fixes anything at the bottom. I'll close this thing up, and I'll refresh. And there, it brought it down a little bit. So I could try that negative thing. I could do, negative 10 here. Save it. And that might bring it a little bit closer, and that looks pretty good. I think that looks kind of what I was doing here. I forget what I did here. I might have actually, I think on my original one, I think I took away the padding at the bottom of main so that it didn't have that area. So we have that little extra area. That's okay. So I don't know what's worse, tweaking the main or tweaking the that last little unordered list. Now that I think about it, instead of making a special thing just for this, I'd probably get rid of this, even though that worked fine. I'm going to get rid of that, but just to be consistent, so I'm not doing so many tweaking things, I might go to main, and remember, we have 30 all around, so I'm going to do, actually I could copy this, whatever you can do to make it faster. I'm just going to do a space, paste, paste, so it's 30 all around. That's the same thing as just 30. So I just want the one on the bottom. So remember, top, right, bottom. And maybe at the bottom, I just want to put like 10 and see how that looks. I think that's what I did on the other one. And I'll refresh that. And I think that does about the same thing. Looks about the same from doing that. And I'll refresh that. And that looks pretty good. So by looking at this, that's pretty much what we had. I didn't do it exactly the same way. My color is a little darker here, but that's okay. But just to review, because I think we're done with this, so pretty much done with my, and remember, we did all our CSS right in the index page. So we did a body style where we did the margin, width, background color, font family, and that's, remember, everything you do for body is pretty much for the whole page. For the main section, we just adjusted the padding. We had 30 padding all around, but then at the end, I ended up making the bottom one 6. Because there was a little too much space. The H1, I took off the margin and took off that extra space up at the top and even put a negative margin, changed the font, changed the color, got this purple kind of color here. The paragraphs, I took the margins off so there weren't as many spacing on that, and I noticed that the one that was in the footer did that. My OLUL, we just took a margin top of 6 pixels. That kind of reduced the space above there so we had not as much space above the list. Each of these lists had space above, and we kind of took that off. Now remember, it's not called space above, it's called margin top, and we just reduced it to like 6 pixels, which gives it a nice, it brings that heading kind of closer to the list, but not too close. So that's kind of what we did there. And then moving down with our styles, we did our LIs just have a margin bottom of 6 pixels. That just added a little kind of breathing room in here, almost like line spacing. It's almost using like line height might have worked with that as or list item. And then for our footer, we had a background color, the same one that we used for our heading. We had a white color. We put padding all around, 30 on the left and right, 10 on the top and bottom. We made it bold. We did a font size of 90% to make it a little smaller, and that's about it. Remember, we also made 3 sections, main, footer, and header at the top that we really didn't do anything with, but we just put it in its own section so that we can put some padding on main, and that's what we did. So this is our, this is all our styling right here. Just this little bit of code took it from the way it was to start, and this is kind of the finished product that we're working with. So this is what you're going to get to. It should look something like this, except the colors might be a little different. You might, if you had a different picture, you might use different colors here, but that's pretty much what we're working on for ex4-CSS. The next part that we're going to end up doing is putting a picture here with a little caption underneath, but this will be the one that you turn in and that you upload for now. So I'll put more instructions for that of how to upload it.